We have Charlotte Reed, Petrendologist. We've been talking about the people of Ukraine, but today we want to focus on the pets. What is happening to them? And Charlotte Reed has the inside scoop. Charlotte, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. It's
Yeah,
always fun to hang out on the information station in WENG.
we love you, girl. It's been a while. We're so glad you're here. With all of the images we've been seeing from the Ukraine, not good stuff. Our hearts and prayers are with them. So many people have been leaving the Ukraine in the last few weeks since Russia invaded their country. Have Ukrainians and others been able to leave with their pets? We still see some pets on the images.
Yeah, actually, it's amazing. I mean, at this point, statistics are showing about half the people leaving the Ukraine are actually bringing their pets. You know, they can't take very much with them. I mean, maybe a small bag. People are actually putting larger dogs in knapsacks that they've made and carrying them out on their back as they're walking. We've seen bunnies, we've seen rabbits, we've seen dogs. Early on, we saw a lot of people who were leaving by train and car, and they were actually taking the dogs with them. It's a lot harder, obviously, with the big dogs, but I mean, people are leaving in wheelchairs with their pets
Wow.
on their lap. I mean, it's so interesting to see. I saw an interview today with a small girl, and she said, in English, she said, you know, my cat, it's like my son. You know, and so that's what we're seeing now, and it just goes to show you the bond, the animal human bond is so strong. And especially now when people need that unconditional love for their animal, they need to feel, they need to feel some light, some hope, and their pets allow them to do that. So, thank goodness they're taking their pets. It kind of reminds me of those images in Louisiana after the hurricane where people
Yep.
would not leave their pets. They were stranded on roofs with their dogs, in trying to leave, stuck in cars with their dogs. And, a woman stayed home with her 10 cats in the Garden District.
Yep.
So we just see that wherever you are, in most countries or most Western feeling countries, I use that really strongly, that people just love their pets and they're part of their family.
Charlotte, I know you and I feel the same way, and many of our listeners out there in listener land on WNG feel the exact same way. They're part of the family. I can't remember, Charlotte, if you have kids or not, but I don't, but my dogs are my kids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way that you do. I don't have children. I have four dogs, four English toy spaniels, and they're my kids. I mean, I love them. So I understand the feelings when I see those interviews with those pet owners, what they're feeling. I mean, we're fortunate that so many people are able to leave with their pets and they're going to Romania, they're going to Hungary, they're going to Poland, they're going to
Yep.
Germany, and now they're going to the UK. But there are also pets that have been left behind, which is unfortunate. Now, there was a group that I read about actually this morning called Breaking Chains. It's former British military, and they're actually taking out pets that have been left behind. Which is a good thing, and hopefully people will be able to reunite with their pets. The other big thing, which is unfortunate, and it happens all the time, and we've seen this in Syria, we've seen this in Iraq. One of the hardest groups of people are actually animals left behind, are animals in zoos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a lot of people they don't really think about that because they see the images of people with their pets and they can relate to that, but they don't think about the zoo animals. Some have early on been evacuated, but it's very hard to evacuate those type of animals. And as a result, who ends up staying with them are their caretakers, the people who on a daily basis feed them, because what a lot of people don't understand is zoo animals, no matter how you feel about the zoo and the containment, they're priceless. I mean,
Yep.
I'm sure you remember Harambe in the zoo when he had to be put down because the little boy fell into the pit at the zoo. And I remember talking to Ron McGill. Ron McGill is the spokesperson and a wildlife expert for the Miami Zoo here in Florida. And and the funny thing was, a lot of people didn't realize that Harambe wasn't owned by the Columbus Zoo or the Gladys Porter in Texas. It actually was owned by the Miami Zoo based on breeding rates. And so I had said, could you put a value on that silverback gorilla? And he said, no, those animals are priceless. So when I
Right.
think of zoo animals, I think of them as priceless. So hopefully, we've seen the deterioration over the years in Venezuela. People were going into zoos eating the animals. We saw the deterioration in Syria in the last few years. The animals are so agitated because of the gunfire, especially the big cats. So I know Poland has tried to make some accommodation for the animals. I haven't really been able to follow up with that. We haven't seen a lot of news lately, but I'm
Right.
really hoping that those zoo animals, I'm praying for those zoo animals.
You mentioned where the refugees are going. Once they have relocated, Charlotte, what organizations are helping the pet owners and their pets once they get out of Ukraine to their fleed destination, so to
Sure.
speak?
Let's start with the European community. And the reason I say that is because the European community, as well as some non-European community members like the UK, for example, Finland, have also, they all have European pet passports, which basically means that your pet can travel freely throughout the European community if your nation or you're a national of a European community member.
Oh, wow.
Now, since Brexit, obviously, the UK is not a member of the European community. They're an independent entity. But the European community has definite stringent requirements for pets traveling, one of which is within probably a 48-hour to up to 6 hours before you enter the country, your pet has to be dewormed.
Mm.
Also, pets need the passport is like a health certificate. So also, once you enter the country, you have to make sure that on your documentation that's also on your pet passport, it's the same, because this way they can track pets. They also want pets to be microchipped. So many countries are actually waiving, whether they're European community countries or whether they're the UK, they're waiving those requirements, which is amazing. So people
Oh,
can freely leave. Now, early on, it wasn't as easy because people were trying to get to airports and evacuate with their pets, and they weren't able to, for example, fly. I read about one young man in India. His parents owned a business in the Ukraine. Ukraine gets a lot of international business. If you look at the
mm,
pictures, I mean, I know it's devastation, but you'll see it's a very international city. People come from all over the world, including the Chinese, who own a lot of businesses in the Ukraine. Well, this Indian student went with his parents to the airport because, as I said, his parents own a business, and they wouldn't let him on the plane with his dog.
uh-oh.
So he decided to stay behind because he rescued his dog about a year before, and he wasn't going to leave him. What was he going to do? Leave him in the apartment or put him in the street? So he decided to stay behind. And, I pray for that kid because he's a young college student, a university student. I pray for him. So, like I said, people are having difficulty leaving. But the European and non-European members have waived the requirements.
That's
The
great.
Humane Society International has been a very big help. They have taken donations for Mars, for example. Mars, they used to make candy. They still make candy, I should say. We grew up on their candy.
Yep.
And now they're actually, for the last, I'm going to say 15 or so years, they've been really into the pet business. And they've sent a large donation to Humane Society International. Those donations are originally have been spread out. And now we see, most recently we're seeing people going, based on where they are, going into Hungary, going into Romania. Poland, at least, is a safer European country with has some infrastructure. Romania is a very poor country. And then, the wealthier can actually move through and go to Germany as well as go to the UK. People are sending donations to Humane Society International. That's very helpful. There are local groups on the borders who are helping those pets, feeding those animals. I'm going to see it actually not next week, but the week after. I'm going to see if I can actually go to Germany and help with one of the local groups there.
Oh, that's great, Charlotte.
The Kennel Club, which is the British Kennel Club, they have Crufts Dog Show. And they had their dog show recently. They determined very early on that they would have no Russian nationals or
Mm.
dogs born from Russia
Oh,
participate in the kennel club. Westminster and Crufts are the largest, longest, most prestigious dog shows in the world.
yes, I know you go to them a lot, and we enjoy
I do.
your things from there. Yep, yep.
Right. So the president of the kennel club, put out the announcement and people supported it. And I mean, it's unfortunate, kennel clubs and chess clubs and sports unite people with differences. And so, like dogs do, dogs and chess and groups and all types of sports, they unite people. You find a common ground. And it's unfortunately they had to do that. They had to, punish Russians who most Russians have no control over the situation of their
Right.
president of their country, invading Ukraine. But it just goes to show you that Starbucks and ExxonMobil and BP and Citibank, Visa, American Express, the big four accounting firms, they're not in it. Or Kentucky Fried Chicken, yummy brands. That's Kentucky Fried Chicken.
McDonald's too.
McDonald's, and the list goes on. Unilever, I mean, you name it. The list goes on. And it just goes to show you that it's also these cultural differences, these cultural institutions that make a difference too.
Are we going to see some of the pets from Ukraine filtering into the United States for adoption? I ask because I'm going to have to ask my husband, but I'm just going to adopt some because I really want to know about that.
Not such a long time ago, the Biden administration put a hold on pets from various countries. And one of the reasons was Russia was one of them. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure Ukraine was one of them too. And one of the reason that was done, it was China, it was Russia, it was three or four, it was a long list of 25 countries. And the reason they were doing that is because they were finding out that dogs that were being imported to this country or exported from other countries, a lot of the either they were very ill. Okay. A lot of, the French Bulldog is such a popular dog. And if you didn't know about the French Bulldog, you found out about it when Lady Gaga's dog walker got shot.
Yep.
Okay. That's a whole other issue, but kidnapping of dogs. But French Bulldogs are very popular, and they're very popular in Russia, and people are breeding them and they're sending them over here. And a group of dogs were sent over here from Russia with forged paperwork, and they got stuck in Chicago. And it was a whole big deal with the United States government, the city of Chicago, and a local rescue group named Paws. Wow. And Paws actually took custody of those dogs. There was like 10 or 12 French Bulldogs. 2 or 3 of them died, and Paws took possession of them, nursed them back to health. And it was a big scandal. Eventually it was quieted down. But because that we've gotten so many sick dogs here, and you know this, when they have every June, when they have the Ulan Dog Festival and China, where that's the festival where they consume lots of dog. Americans go over there and they try to save dogs from some of the slaughterhouses. And some organizations have been very successful, like Humane Society International. Instead of breeding and raising dogs for meat, people have gotten people to become blueberry farmers and various other occupations.
Oh, wow.
Or grow other things. So it's nice to see that, happening. Recently, higher officials have encouraged people. They see the bond that people have with animals in China, and they've been encouraging people to stop eating dog meat. So the problem is that when you're raising these dogs for dog meat, and a lot of times people are stealing these dogs.
Oh my!
And then eventually killing them at sometimes live at markets. They're not healthy. So you could be eating a rabid dog, or you're importing sick dogs. And the paperwork is also phony. Sometimes they say the dogs are 3 when they're really 5, or they say the dogs are 2 when they're really 1. So the United States has stopped that. I mean, there are dogs in this country, and people don't understand. The dogs got moved around. Recently, I interviewed a gal, Dr. Christy Hoffman from Canisius College, and Melissa Thibault with the ASPCA. She's a researcher there. And the research they that the research that they did really talked about, were more people adopting dogs during COVID than what we've seen in the past few years? And
Oh,
they said no, they weren't.
really?
And they said that because, when we have natural disasters in various parts of the country, I'm thinking Texas, or I'm thinking wildfires in California,
Hmm.
there is a mission to move dogs around the country. So maybe if you're in Texas and they're worried about flooding or hurricanes, some people, there's even a group of pilots here who move dogs from place to place. The dogs will move to maybe the north or this another part of the south.
Okay.
So they also said, if you think about it, yeah, maybe local shelters were cleared out, but then, I mean, a lot of people weren't necessarily going out. Also, people who were buying dogs from breeders couldn't necessarily go visit those breeders, or they couldn't necessarily, breeders were not going to the airports because they also too were worried. So they said probably, yeah, some dog. And also, you have to remember, dogs that are coming about now, a lot of it has to do with spay and neuter initiatives were stopped early on during COVID because they couldn't have so many people in shelter organizations in close contact with each other. So it's kind of
Okay.
interesting to see. And also, people talk about, hey, people are returning dogs. I think that's really a regional issue. So, for example, in Colorado, there's an organization called Moms for Mutts, as well as the Dumb Friends League. Many people know the Dumb Friends League all over the country. The Dumb Friends League, as well as Moms for Mutts. Moms for Mutts takes in pregnant females,
Oh, okay.
dogs, not pregnant female people, pregnant female canines.
Thanks for
And
clarifying that.
yeah, and then they find homes for the moms and the mutt moms and their offspring. But in Colorado, people were returning dogs. And, so that doesn't necessarily mean the case. There could be more dogs, like I said, because there were less spay and neuter initiatives. So
Okay.
I think, we all have to, when we read this research and we listen to the media, we all, as you know, we all have to take it in if and see if that's the case. But
Okay.
that's what they were saying. The research that Dr. Christy Hoffman did, and Melissa Thibault from the ASPCA, they looked at shelters from all across the country, and they
Okay.
determined, and there were other issues too. I mean, people were doing more rehoming than they were doing. So if you couldn't take care, you were worried about, you lost your job, maybe you were homed your dog with your brother or your sister or a good friend until your situation changed. But that was also, as you know, an alternative, a factor.
Hmm.
So, look, at this point, we've seen the images. I think the majority of these folks are not going to go back. And what are we talking about? We're talking about women and primarily children, young men under the age of 17, under the age of 18. Because if you were 18, they wouldn't let you leave the Ukraine.
Right.
And of course, there are dogs that are still left. Some people had no choice; they had to leave their dogs.
So what's going to happen to those pets, Charlotte, in your expert opinion? I mean, they're going to find a family? I mean, are they going to find somebody? It's just heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking when you look at those images. I think some people who were afraid to leave with their animals and who did have money. You also have to remember this: prior to people leaving, they couldn't get money out of money machines, or nor could they get money out of banks. So they pretty
Okay.
much left with the money that they had on them or the extra money that they had in their house. Right.
Right.
So, like I said, a lot of these
Oh
people
my.
supposedly needed vet certificates. So that's why the European countries had waived that requirement. But I think you're going to end up having a lot of stray dogs. I think you're going to end up having a lot of dead dogs. I think a lot of people left
Hmm.
pets in their apartment. I mean, they had no choice. And I mean, it's so funny because I was watching one of the national talk shows, and they were interviewing a guy. I think his last name was, he was an actor or playwright. Had something to do with the cultural arts, and he actually came back home to the Ukraine to fight for his country. And he was saying, I overheard, or people were talking about how the Russians don't know what's going on and how they're trying to be solicitous and nice and everything else. And he said, yeah, I overheard some recording of how they're going into people's apartments and stealing their stuff, you
Yeah.
know? And it just kind of, it just kind of reminds you of this mass exodus,
Yeah.
that we've seen before. If Putin does take over the Ukraine, the Russian zoo experts will, take over the zoo because that's generally what always happens.
Okay.
It happened in Poland with the Nazis when they take, because the animals are valuable. And remember that the zookeeper's wife, if you remember that book and that movie,
Yeah.
that talked about that a little bit in that book. So I think the animals eventually will be saved depending on what happens. I'm hoping that they will be saved. I think you'll see, you'll see dogs running loose for a while. I mean, you also have to think about a situation like Chernobyl, for example.
Right.
Um, although most of the people, except for the very old, stayed in Chernobyl after the disaster that happened there many years ago, there's a lot of stray dogs there. Lots and lots of stray dogs there. That's pretty much all that's there. And the workers who worked in Chernobyl. And the average shelf life for one of those dogs is probably 3 to 4 years. Some people have adopted those dogs, workers who spent some time in the nuclear facility. But there'll probably be a lot of dogs running around the streets.
Yeah. It was recently bombed, Chernobyl again. Am
It
I correct?
was.
Charlotte, what do you think we can expect to see in the weeks to come? What are your thoughts on that?
Expect in the weeks to come, more people will filter throughout Europe. They won't just be in Romania and Hungary and Poland. I think more people will be moving throughout Germany. I think more people will be moving to the UK. The UK is kind of planning up for that. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're also, I can only pray for the Ukrainians. You could pray for the people left behind or who couldn't leave, the old, for example. You pray for the folks who are not necessarily Ukrainian. We lost an American recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are people, from what I understand, from this country who are Ukrainian going there. You kind of have to pray in this kind of situation. You kind of have to pray for everyone. I mean, one of the people I think of now is I think of that TV network gal who was holding up that sign. I don't know if you saw that. Someone was reporting, and she's standing there holding up a sign talking about the Ukrainian-Russian war. And supposedly, if you were to talk about the war, speak about it, demonstrate, you're getting 15 years in jail. And we know that she was a beautiful young gal, and we know that 15 years in jail here is different from 15 years in jail there. I think we'll probably, see more. I think the images will get a lot eerier and a lot more depressing. I think we'll see more dead bodies on the streets. I think we'll see more animals on the streets. If you have Ukrainian friends, ask them how you can help. I mean, local churches here in our area have been doing everything, wrapping up diapers and foodstuffs and wipes and putting them in backpacks. But if you can, whether it's $1, whether it's $5, whether it's $100 or $10,000, if you can donate to Humane Society International, that will really help. Get on your Facebook channels and thank Mars for donating pet supplies, because I think it's important that we do that. I mean, we spend so much of our lives on social media, and we these days we tend to always want to talk about the bad, you know what I mean? But
Right.
let's support those companies who support others, who are helping others in need.
Where can we find out more information on, number one, on what we were talking about, Charlotte, and on the Pet Buzz too? Where can people listen to your show?
Well, people can listen on various 68 stations around the country. They can also listen to the streaming channel, go to the Google Play, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn. So you can go to thepetbuzz.com and find that out. You can go to our social media channels. I know I've been putting together, I'm going to put it out this weekend, just faces of people I've collected with their pets. Who've left the Ukraine, just putting a little, photo log together.
Yeah,
montage of some of the people.
Good. Great.
And I'll keep you posted if I end up going to Germany.
Absolutely. We've got to have you back on. We want we want the ground boots on the ground news report from you.
Sometimes we think the world is such a big place, but like I said, it's those things that bring us together. It's the sports, it's the dogs, it's the professions. I mean, think about it like this, and I hate to say it, it reminded me of the fire, but there are people when there's a fire, people travel from all over the country to go to California or Florida or Montana to help with a forest fire. They end up making friends. So we have to recognize that sports and these other hobbies and interests unite us. And at the end of the day, we all want a lot of the same things. We want good schools for our kids. We want lower taxes. We want to be able to live a good and healthy and a life with some dough, with some money. And pets. Why not?
And
right?
Pets. Don't forget the pets.
Yeah, we can't forget the pets.
Charlotte Reed, Petrendologist with the Pet Buzz. Thank you so much for your time today. You are a wealth of information. It's always good having you on. Thank you so much.
And it's always great to see your smiling face.
Thanks for viewing our content on Pet Buzz Plus.